phones are turned off or on a silent mode. Thank you. First order of business is call the roll call. Commissioner Speyer, Commissioner Minchella,
Here.
Commissioner Scott Berman.
Here.
Commissioner Franklin,
Here.
Commissioner Jivayahu.
Here.
Commissioner Gupta is absent. Commissioner Jeff Berman.
Here.
Commissioner Matei.
Here.
And I am present. So we do have a quorum. First order of business is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. We have a motion to approve. Okay.
Second.
Any questions or additions to the minutes? None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. All right, tonight we have two cases that are related, and they are case 2024-20P, a subdivision request, and 2024-21P, site plan approval. Procedures, I will have the petitioner come up and make their presentation. After their presentation, the staff will come up and give the commission their report, after which time I will open up the floor to anyone who has a question or comment on these two cases. Now, because of the size of the audience tonight, I'm going to limit each person to 3 minutes. If there's a group that are kind of coming up together, I'd ask maybe you pick a spokesperson to represent you and have him or her come up and speak on your behalf. Okay. Okay, is the petitioner ready tonight?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Good evening. I'm Donna Pugh. I'm a partner in the law firm of Foley and Lardner on behalf of the petitioner. And I just wanted to explain, we've all known it as Westfield Old Orchard. So you can continue to say Westfield, or URW is a combination of Unibile, Redamco, and Westfield, which merged a few years back. So you'll probably hear us interchangeably refer to both of those entities. So they are one and the same for our purposes. Yes.
What's in order, Counselor?
Yes, no, this is proper and correct for both cases.
Thank you. Ms.
Okay.
Pugh, please
Thank you.
continue. By the way, are there members in your party that will be testifying tonight? If so, could you have them
Yes.
stand up and I will swear them in?
My co-counsel does not need to be sworn, correct? My-
Yes,
My colleague?
that's fine.
Okay, but everyone else that
All
needs
right.
to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you? Thank you very much. Ms. Pugh, please continue.
Wonderful, okay. So I just wanted to mention that I have been lucky enough to represent Old Orchard for 30-some years. So I've seen a lot of change. I've had the pleasure to work with the Village of Skokie for a long time, and really happy as long as we've been speaking about mixed use at the center, which is at least 12, 15 years that I can remember. We've been wanting to see residential there, and really happy that tonight we can bring the project forward. So at long last. By way of background, let me show you. It's a little bit complicated. I know I've got a pointer here somewhere. Okay, so what you see in green, and please tell me if, when I'm standing here, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so in the mint green, I guess I should say, the other kind of looks green. This is what is owned by URW, and including this tiny little parcel here. So, and in the yellow, or whatever color that looks like now, is owned by Macy's, or technically Federated is the company. And then here's the Village Garage. The Village owns the land underneath there. So you are a landowner, for those that did not know that. That was a part of the original transaction when everything was redeveloped. And so the site plan that we're talking about tonight is for the green, that only for us. Macy's has its own site plan, and that governs its land. Okay, now, let's see, I advance right here, yes. Okay, so tonight, but I forgot to mention back here, but everything that you see in the mall has a reciprocal easement agreement that allows everyone to park and drive over each other's property. You can park anywhere, it's all one for purposes of parking, traffic, access, anything like that. It's all shared. So we've always met the standard for the whole center, for parking and any kind of traffic concerns. Okay, now, so as Chairman Luke pointed out, we're seeking two things. One, the site plan. So the last time, and I know a few of you were there at the time when we did the total mall strategy and completely redid the site plan, was 2012. And that was, completely redoing all the common areas and the like. So that's the last time we've done the site plan. This is really major enough that we have to redo the site plan. A number of you've seen us here with minor changes to the site plan, but this is now a full amendment. And as you can see, some of the newer things that we're proposing, we're calling out in phase 1 and phase 2. And then, things have been updated from the old one to reflect that Lord and Taylor isn't there and things like that. So this is the legal document. This is going to be part of the ordinance, and this is what we will be bound to. And if we want to change it, we can either do a minor, what you call modified, or we might have to come back again if we did any kind of radical change to this. Okay, so that's the site plan. And then this is the subdivision, which it looks mysteriously like the last drawing, but I think I've got the right, yes, I do indeed. Okay, so staff encouraged us, and we were happy to do it, to make a separate lot for phase 1 and a separate lot for phase 2. That way it stands on its own. Certain approvals pertain to phase 1, certain will pertain to phase 2. And then the rest of the center, this is being all of the URW land, except for that little piece, which is not included in this, are being re-subdivided, mainly taking out a lot of the lines that are in between. I know a number of you are in real estate, so the tax parcels, we're taking a lot of those out. But we are keeping quite a few, and that the main thing is to create these 2 lots. Okay, now, and let me show you, this is way up here, and I knew you couldn't read it, so this is a blow up of that. Okay, so again, some of you may remember in 2009, the village asked Westfield to donate 20 feet all across their frontage, which they did willingly, donated it to the county so that they could widen the road. And although there was deeded and it was recorded in a plat of highways, the village just asked us to just document that. So it says heretofore deeded, and it basically is just indicating a historical fact, but it makes it clear for anyone who would review the plat. So that pertains to this and this, pointing at this strip. And then here, this is a new dedication. You know how the whole new endeavor has come along to change Laverne and everything, and all the litigation is over. And so this was just in 2021, okay, where we donated this, not donated, this time we got paid for it, but we are giving this land, but the plat of highways hasn't been recorded yet. It takes so long. So the village correctly said, why don't we just dedicate it here? And so we've got the language here by dedicated. We've worked with the county, they like the language, and there's a signature block for them to accept the dedication. There's a number of lawyers in the room. I know that it's not official in Illinois unless it's accepted, so that we've got that language in there. So I want you to be assured about that. Okay, so we've covered that. And then, yes, really the other thing to say is that, of course, we're going to be before the Appearance Commission as well. And that, I believe, is a week from Wednesday. It's August 28th. And then we're hoping to be before the village board in September, or as soon as we can get there. So that's our process. And then I wanted to tell you who's with us here tonight. We have quite a few folks, only a few will speak, but just so you know who's here, if you have questions, that type of thing. So from Foley, in addition to myself, is my colleague Mike Noonan from URW. Some of you have met Stephen Floor, Senior Vice President of Development, and Ali Abuzed, Director of Development. And from Focus, we're honored to have the CEO and founder, Tim Anderson. He's not gonna speak, but he's here. And Justin Pillay is right here, Principal and Executive Vice President of Development. And then Vic Howe, Vice President of Development. And then the folks who are standing by, but technical experts if you need that. Mike Rollinson, where are you there? Yeah, Senior Principal with Torti Gallis and Partners, our architects. Dan Stevens, President of Spaceco, there he is, our civil engineer. And Kelly Connolly, PE Associate with Sam Schwartz, our transportation planners. So with that, I'm gonna introduce you to Stephen Floor. Stephen? I'll give you that.
Just for the record, would you give us your name and address into the microphone, please?
Of course, yeah. Stephen Fleur, Stephen, and it's Fluhr, and it's 1 Garden State Plaza in Paramus, New Jersey.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Stephen Fleur, Senior Vice President of Development for Westfield. I oversee all the development activities for Westfield in the Midwest and on the East Coast. I've been with Westfield for 24 years now. I've had the pleasure of working on Old Orchard, leading the development concepts for the projects for the last 7 years, and I'm really excited to be here with you tonight. I'm going to be presenting with my residential co-developer partners, Focus Development. That'll be coming up after me as we get in to start talking about some of the very detailed portions of the 2 phases before you. Before we get there, just to start with a little bit of context, I know everybody knows Old Orchard. I'm taking it for granted, but it's a big site. And I'd like to just point out kind of the areas that we're really going to be focusing on tonight. So just for context, Nordstrom on this end, the Orange Garage I want to point out in particular because we'll come back and talk about the importance of that as part of this project, the former Bloomingdale's building, and then we reference this as the North Mall section. Essentially everything north of the professional building at the site has been the focus of study. And as I'm sure you've seen, if you've driven by the site, the former Lord & Taylor is now finally long gone. We've re-tenanted that with new tenants. We've got 1 tenant left to go. That probably will not open until the beginning of next year at this point, but a nice transformation for that box. So, moving into more of the vision of what we plan to do here. So, the vision is one on delivering on the concept of live, work, play, dine, and shop, all in one place. Tonight represents several years' worth of study and planning and analysis and investment to ensure that the future planning of Old Orchard enhances its standing as the retail flagship destination for the North Shore. And that's important to remember. This is not a dying mall discussion. This is a discussion about how we add in a smart way to the site to make it even more potent as more of a destination here in Skokie. As I said, we're going to go into the detail kind of phase by phase, but our focus is on redevelopment of the North Mall area. Replacing the former Bloomingdale's building along with the adjacent retail with 2 phases of mixed use, up to 425 units of multifamily residential over a retail podium in phase 1, and up to 250 units of multifamily residential over a retail podium in phase 2, as well as a hotel building in phase 2 as well, a 200-key hotel. The parking for phase 1 is going to reutilize a portion of that underutilized orange parking garage. And it is significantly underutilized. We've done a lot of studies around understanding traffic and parking utilization on the site. And the phase 2 multi-family building will self-park, so it's got a wrapped garage inside the building. And then the hotel is envisioned that would be a valet and self-park type operation, also incorporated into the orange garage. So before I get into any more of the details as well, this project is going to bring significant environmental improvements to the site. URW was recently named one of the top 100 most sustainable publicly traded companies in the world by Time Magazine. Obviously, we're excited about that, and we're excited to bring forward the examples of how we do that and how we can implement that here in Skokie. So some of the examples that you'll see for this type of project here, LEED Gold certified buildings. improvement to the stormwater processing and the treatment, lush landscaping with a focus on natives and pollinator-friendly perennial plants, incorporated EV charging and smart energy management systems, and solar panels where appropriate. These are just a few examples of how we're gonna incorporate the sustainable path here and how we're gonna execute and maintain the site on a forward basis. URW's Better Places 2030 plan that's referenced on this page, it's really a roadmap for all of our global assets in Europe and in the United States to meet strict environmental transition requirements as outlined in the Paris Accords, frankly. And if anybody's interested, we're happy to send a link. It's actually really interesting to see the path that we're on in terms of reduction of carbon at all of our sites in particular. But let's shift and focus now to talk about everybody's favorite, which is traffic, parking, particularly when it comes to the malls. The purpose of this slide really is to show how we are working today at the site and how we're gonna be working in the future. And you'll notice kind of right off, it's relatively small changes that we're talking about. So the impacted zone today, when you're following the ring road around Crate and Barrel, you're headed toward Laverne next to the old Bloomingdale's. You kind of have that awkward pork chop left-hand turn onto Laverne. In the future, we essentially cut that off, that path of travel. We do create a new right in, right out, just to provide opportunity for exits onto the street. Or if you're a retail customer, you're gonna be able to come in, go left, and you can either turn here and go out Laverne to get back to the highway on Old Orchard Road. Or what we envision as a retail customer is you're gonna then utilize that inner ring road to be able to circulate around the entire mall. It's really important to us that we provide as frictionless a possible path for our customers at the site. So we take a long time understanding paths of travel, how things are being utilized. So it's been very important to us that we did the site circulation studies, we did the parking utilization studies, and really we got the focus on using the underutilized parking garage and got very comfortable with the path of travel for the customers here. Now, to make anything happen at the site, we invested with our retail partner, Bloomingdale's. That was the first thing we needed to do to make the project happen. As you know, we relocated them from this position down to here. They went from 200,000 square feet down to 53,000 square feet, and they're doing more sales out of 53,000 square feet than they did out of 200. So it's been a big success. It's us partnering with our retailers to make them more successful and also for us to be able to create a zone to help reinvent Old Orchard. We wanted to ensure that our long-term plans enhance the retail core here, provided a destination for the broader community to come experience Old Orchard as a new way, as a regional downtown, while also still enjoying the best shopping, dining, entertainment experience that people expect when they come to Old Orchard now. It was designed in a way that from the first phase, the community would be pedestrian friendly with strong, safe connections. And importantly, it was a mandate from phase one to ensure that the circulation, if anything, was improved for the people using the site. And as you can see on the slides, we've worked with our professionals, your professional staff. We've worked with the county staff. We partnered with Transit, with PACE and CTA to develop plans that we're confident that are not just going to maintain the status quo, but actually make it a little bit better. So these applications before you tonight move to create this place, with the bulk of the new amenities to be constructed in the first phase of the project. It's a major investment by URW and Focus Development, where we're replacing quote-unquote kind of bad retail space that's there today that's underperforming with right-sized, right-positioned, right-tenanted retail in the podiums of the buildings, significantly enhancing the tax base from the site, and creating a place with a diverse offer of best-in-class apartment living, including a selection of sizes and types of apartments, including affordable housing units. This is a generational opportunity to embark on the evolution of the site. One that enhances, not replaces, the Old Orchard that everyone knows and loves. A place for everyone to come spend time with friends. A place that's designed with sustainability and the environment at top of mind. A destination for all, a home and a workplace for some. From the moment of conception, the focus was on creating a mixed-use community while bettering the center. By being thoughtful about the parking, being thoughtful about the customer journey, and taking an approach that puts the customer first and considers the entire site in our planning, increasing the pedestrian safety through smart environmental design, expanding our genuinely friendly pedestrian experience that's there today at Old Orchard. We didn't want to mess with that, that's for sure. And in partnership with CTA and PACE, ensuring that our new residents have easy, safe access to the transit connection on site. And last but not least, the town green, which is partially shown in the picture, not fully here. Approximately 22,000 square feet in size. It's about a half an acre of open space that we're gonna be dedicating and designed as much for passive enjoyment as for active enjoyment in terms of activities and programming. You know, the programming, we want to be conscious of the fact that this is now also a residential environment. It's not just the typical commercial Old Orchard environment. You can expect activities such as, farmers markets, seasonal fairs, musical entertainment, and the like. URW is very powerful in creating events in public spaces, and we look forward to creating a platform of events across our projects across the country. This is not the only place that we're executing projects like this right now, and we're really excited to bring that expertise to bear here. And finally, before I turn over the presentation to my co-development partner, I do want to publicly thank Skokie staff. I do work all over the country, a lot of different jurisdictions. I've been very impressed with the professionalism, the insights that they've given us as we work through the application process with Skokie. And with that, I'll turn it over to Justin to walk you through phase 1, and I'll be back to talk some on phase 2.
Great. Good evening. I am Justin Pillay. You want my address, I assume?
Yes.
100 South Wacker, Chicago, Illinois. We're absolutely thrilled to be here. Back, frankly, in Skokie. Tim, our founder, had done a project here a long time ago, but we're very excited. Again, my name is Justin Pillay. I'm Executive Vice President at Focus. I've been with the company for 19 years, and I guess more exciting, I'm also a Skokie resident, so this is a fun project for me, and I'm looking forward to hopefully it successfully moving forward. I gotta change the slide here. On the screen are some examples of the typical work that we've been doing for over 30 years. We specialize in high quality infill development, predominantly in the North Shore, but we've also done a lot of work in Fulton Market and other communities. A lot of these projects here you might recognize, and I think it speaks to the quality and the type of product that we're envisioning for Old Orchard. This slide is actually, I think, somewhat unique to us. We are in the process right now of developing, or I should say re-envisioning, 2 regional malls local to the area here, Hawthorne Mall and Fox Valley Mall. Both projects are apartment redevelopments with retail, and they both have, we've opened the first phase on both malls successfully. They're both fully stabilized, and we're actually working now on the second phase of both those developments. And I think it speaks to a certain expertise that we bring to the table. I mean, there's a lot of multifamily residential developers out there, but we've cut our teeth in malls locally here, and I think you can drive these, you can see that they're real, and I think that speaks to a level of specialty or expertise that we can bring to the table. Before I move this slide, I'll leave the prettier pictures up. I think why residential is going to be a question, certainly. Why apartments at a mall? Firstly, it provides a consistent shopper base for the mall, especially important to restaurants and service-oriented tenants. Stephen can speak to this better than I, but having a good mix of tenants in a mall is very important. And the daytime population, or at least the weekday population, the residential, medical office, which they already have, hotels and things really help the tenant base and allow for a more vibrant mall. Secondly, the multifamily is a financial catalyst that helps Westfield further invest in the mall, whether that be infrastructure, roads, stormwater improvements, retail tenants, and so on. To Stephen's point, turning bad retail into something productive. Thirdly, the proposed multifamily allows Skokie to capture a renter that desires a suburban location, yet also wants the vibrancy of an urban environment. Simply put, no other suburban multifamily product in the region has direct pedestrian access to the absolute pinnacle of retail tenancy. If this project moves forward, people can walk out the door. I mean, you guys shop there, I shop there. It's a phenomenal amenity, and I think it creates a synergy that is going to be extremely successful. And lastly, multifamily development provides much needed housing options for young professionals and empty nesters throughout the nation. We are facing a housing shortage. I imagine you guys read about that. There's a variety of reasons why. But one of the most challenging issues facing the housing market is a lack of starter homes, especially in mature communities like Skokie. Multifamily developments help this issue in two distinct ways. It acts as an on-ramp for younger professionals, maybe getting into their career. That gives them an opportunity to move into a community, check it out, establish a little bit of savings, maybe save up for their first home. Secondly, it provides an option for established residents who are in the community, who are often aging out of their houses or single-family homes, to move into a new amenitized home that better fits their needs. In turn, their existing single family then becomes available for that next generation of younger folks who are moving into the community. Sort of a circle of life, if you want to say, of residential. We've seen this thesis play out very successfully throughout the North Shore, and in particular at these mall communities. And I won't go into the details, but I can't tell you how many people come up to us, especially empty nesters, older people, maybe people with health issues, who say, thank you for building this product. I didn't have a nice option to move out of my house and go someplace I felt comfortable, that was amenitized, that had services and so on. I was basically just staying in my house because I didn't know what else to do. So it's somewhat of a feel-good moment when we have those that type of feedback. All right, now into less feel-good moments and into the technical stuff. So Stephen touched on circulation. This slide is similar, but I want to kind of orientate you where things are. So, getting the laser pointer out here, the gas stations are over here. The green office building is a little bit, to the south there. This is Laverne and Old Orchard. We'll talk about the building more in details in a second. The green represents the pedestrian flow as we see it moving forward. And so you'll see that there's clear pedestrian access from Old Orchard, down Laverne, between our two buildings here, into the mall, and then the multi-use path that's currently being constructed on Old Orchard, additional pedestrian access along this street, which we have not named yet, but generally aligns with Bronx, and so on. More interesting, and I think I'll give our architect credit for this, one of the genius moves that I think we made as far as the site planning is the traffic flow to the residential. So as Stephen mentioned, we're going to be utilizing the orange garage to the south for the residential parking. It'll be separated out secure parking with direct access into the building. So it'll operate basically like a new building with a new garage, except that we're using this garage. But as far as drop-offs and lobbies, what we have is this mortar court here, which is essentially a cul-de-sac of sorts that allows people to come in, get dropped off, picked up. The lobbies are here, but it stops the vehicle and all the residential traffic from breaching the mall. And so we'll get into the planning a little bit further, but the nice thing about this is it really isolates residential traffic generation and everything somewhat to Laverne, but again, kind of protects that pedestrian experience that we all enjoy when we visit Old Orchard. So that's a little background of how we kind of came up with the circulation. And it'll play out more in the pretty pictures in a minute. All right, moving on to the plan. This is the exciting stuff. All right, so phase one is what you see on the screen here, and that's what I'll be talking about. Steve will come up and talk more in detail about phase two, but phase one consists of two buildings, 5-story building on the north end, 7-story building on the south end. Now, technically, they're a single building. They're connected by a series of bridges, which I'll get into in a few more slides, but the bridges allow for people parking in the garage, for example, to walk through the building and get to the north building. In addition, this larger bridge, which you can't really see very well on the screen, is our amenity deck that also allows people to walk through it. I'm going to kind of go counterclockwise on the plan. So we talked about the multi-use plan that's currently being constructed as part of the Old Orchard improvements. In this corner over here, we have a dedicated bike room, so people that want to exercise, they can directly access the multi-use. We have a dog run here specific for the building, so people with pets are able to have their pets relieve themselves on property. The motor court, as we discussed. Now in the middle, which is not unique to Chicago, but certainly unique, I think, to the suburbs, is these large courtyards. So the units wrap the building. Many of the units look outward, right, to the streets, but a lot of the units also look into these gorgeous interior courtyards. They're very large in size, and each of these courtyards will be programmed with things like dining areas, grill stations, potentially like sometimes we'll do bocce. We can hold programs out there. Like for example, our property managers oftentimes will have a a yoga session or bring in one of the retailers that do some sort of tasting or something like that. We can use those outdoor spaces for that, in addition to, you know, the spaces in the town green that we're gonna talk about as well. We talked about the garage already. Now, along, I'll call it Bronx, even though our zoning attorney was recommending one of them. Was recommending, we call it Shirley, so we have Laverne and Shirley Avenue. That's Mike. We have 16,000 square feet of new retail approximately, that's along the street here, and it'll show up in the elevations momentarily. In addition, the 22,000 square foot town green is shown here, and this is a huge investment by URW Westfield. They're demolishing, you know, again, bad retail, but still it's buildings, to create 22,000 square foot open space that they're gonna program with music and everything else. That's truly a public space. It benefits the residential, but it's for everybody. So I envision it, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Stephen, but like, you know, holiday celebrations, 4th of July, things like that, this will be that space. So, again, we're at the park here. The other thing that's kind of interesting is, you know, as you walk through the mall now, you walk underneath the professional building, and this north end sort of, you know, terminates basically a Cheesecake Factory, right? And so what we're trying to do, and you'll see it more when we show you the phase 2, is really create some interesting, I don't want to call it view corridors, terminus, whatever you want to call it, to the north end of the mall. So as you can imagine, you come up here, you turn left in phase 1, you're faced with this beautiful park. You are able to cross this 20-foot wide pedestrian-friendly street. We're showing pavers. We don't envision this being a busy street. And then you are looking at this amenity deck. And the next slide will spell that out a little bit better. So the amenity deck itself includes an elevated pool on the 3rd floor looking over that park. It includes fitness, work from home spaces, event space, kitchen, all the things that a luxury apartment building, and you can look at our website, we have pictures and so on, includes. But what's really neat, I think, about this is that the people up here, they're looking over the park. The park's looking over the amenity. It's a cohesive, you know, space designed well together, they complement each other, and frankly, a lot of money is being spent in this zone that everyone can appreciate. So I think that's a really nice solution, and because this is raised right here, if you're walking home to your apartment from the mall, you go through the park, you cross the street, and you actually walk underneath the pool to your lobby. And so what that gives us also is underneath the pool deck, a large area of cover where restaurants and or retailers have the ability to use outdoor space that's covered for maybe like if it's a restaurant, right? You can have a dinner late fall out there with the heaters and things like that. It's a nice experience. All right, moving on. I'll be honest, I went to school for architecture, but I'm not an architect. We have an architect here, so I'm gonna go quick over this stuff. If you guys have questions about that architecture, we're welcome to jump in. So this elevation here is the east elevation facing the park, and the only reason why I bring that up is for really 2 reasons. One, the heights of the building, again, 7-story and 5 stories. Contextual for what it's worth to the garage, which is 6 stories. We're not doing a tower. We're well below the allowances under the zoning. We're really trying to respect the fact that, you know, this is not, it's a lot of density. I mean, I'll give you that, but it's not a lot of height. We're trying to be respectful of the existing scale. Old Orchard, while it has the medical office building, is a very horizontal center. When you walk through the spaces, it's arcades, retail, and so on. So one of the nice design moves that Mike and his team did is the retail that's along this east edge reads like the existing Old Orchard retail. It's got a datum of horizontal datum, I should say, that really, you know, speaks to the retail, and the residential above, while it's somewhat set back, reads differently. On the bottom here is the elevation along Old Orchard. And the renderings do a better job, so I'm just gonna move on and not bury myself with architecture details here. All right, this is the corner of Laverne here in Old Orchard. Gas stations are over here in the wood paneling, okay? This happens to be phase 2, which Stephen will talk to, but this is the 5-story portion, again, bike room down here. But again, one of the things we really spent a lot of time on is trying to get the materiality right, colors and scale. You see, we wanted to read residential, so you see things like balconies on most of the units. You see warm colors, but yet they're light like the rest of Old Orchard with a lot of white brick and stuff on Old Orchard. We didn't want to go dark or bold colors and so on. We really wanted to fit in contextually. And then again, the horizontal, while the retail reads very horizontal, we tried at these corners to play up the horizontality of the building, to keep the plane of the building feeling low, but also to pick up on, again, that mid-century horizontal theme that you see throughout the center. All right, next one. All right, this one gets me really jazzed. So this is the motor court here. So again, this is Laverne, right? We're about halfway down the street to get to the orange garage, which again is on the wood paneling over here. And the intent here was to create a drop-off zone, a lobby, a residential experience that was complementary to the mall, but also separate, because we don't want the residential traffic intermixing with the mall and confusing people and so on. So the idea is if you're living here and you're getting picked up by an Uber, the Uber comes in, it pulls in this very pedestrian-friendly but also quaint, street. In this street, while the rendering doesn't show it wonderfully, are two-story masonette units that are literally have front doors. They have front doors that open out onto this street. At the back of the street is a turnaround for vehicles and so on, and then on either side is a lobby for each building. And so, I think it's unique. I think it does speak residential. It does speak quality, and also the bridges. So we got to talk about the bridges. These bridges are third, fourth, and fifth floor, and again, architectural pieces that when you're standing in that space, it provides a level of interest that you don't see in other buildings around here, and I think is very, very evocative for, it shows the quality that we're trying to achieve. So, and I should probably, Stephen kind of stole my thunder, but I can repeat a little bit. This building is, again, 425 units we're planning. The parking is completely contained in the garage. A little over 600 stalls. We can get into the details and so on. We're intending to build it as a single phase. We think it will take somewhere around 27 months to build, and so on and so forth. All right, and then this is on the other side of the mortar court. So now we're in the town green. Now this is that pedestrian path, and they're showing a waterfall or fountain and so on. But the intent here is, especially over to the left, is a lot of green space. But here's that retail. Here's that horizontal datum, as I mentioned, and then up here is that pool deck, which we think is very interesting because you can walk through to get to the residential. The retail wraps around the corner, so it engages with the residential, and it feels like Old Orchard. I mean, that's the only way I can put it. What else do I got here? I think that's about it. Did I miss anything, Dick? We're good? All right. We're here for questions. Appreciate you guys' time. Again, I want to compliment staff like Stephen did. Really appreciate the work that they do and made the process very, very productive and easy so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Vic Howell, address 100 South Wacker, Chicago, Illinois. I'm the Vice President of Development at Focus. I've been and will continue to be the day-to-day for this first phase of the development. So, thank you. Thanks, Justin. So I'll be here just briefly to speak about a couple more topics that are a little bit more global, but obviously specific to phase one in the immediate sense. The first of which is sustainability. So Stephen touched on URW's sustainability commitment. Focus is very similar in terms of our intent and our practice. Our organization, it's focused on enhancing the communities while providing obviously sustainable, resilient communities, both in the planning, the construction, the operations of those properties. Our ESG program the last several years primarily is focused on buildings with NGBS, if you're familiar, silver certified buildings, LEED silver as well as LEED gold. This project in particular is pursuing LEED gold, as Stephen mentioned. We will be confirming those credits, specific credits, throughout the implementation of design, but I did want to show just a few of the initiatives that we do intend to proceed with that align with the village's sustainability strategy as well. Great. So without just reading through this, I'll just highlight a few of these, but you can read in parentheses is effectively the sustainability plan, the village's plan that I mentioned, and the specific initiative action, if you wanted to reference those at all. The few things I did want to highlight, The redevelopment and these mall lifestyle style centers that we're into these days, they promote walkability just by nature, given the uses that are together. The corner of the mall, as Justin noted, is well sited to take advantage of that multi-use path. And he also mentioned the bike storage facilities, which is a portion of the lead that we're going to be generous with, both for residential and retail uses. We will be installing EV charging stations in the Orange Garage for the residential use. And also the note, of course, as Justin mentioned, the garage itself is being maintained, retained, used for different use, of course, rather than demolition. It is a matter of infill development, but also just reuse of the existing structure. We understand and have heard the village is interested in expanding the composting program, so that is a discussion we're having with LRS now in terms of how we handle the waste servicing and how we can manage to fit in some composting within those areas. A general one, of course, is just selection of regionally sourced materials, recycled construction materials, and management of construction waste are all generally prerequisites of LEED, and we intend to conform with that. And then finally, of course, as a high level, just reducing the heat island effect is everybody is interested in these days, but the more specific planting of native resilient plants and landscape, both within the private and public spaces as we go through. The other item that I did want to touch on is affordable housing, which of course has a lot of energy these days, both globally, nationally, and of course in Skokie. So, as noted in the staff report, if you read the note, the Skokie's inclusionary housing ordinance that was recently passed is not applicable for this application. However, both URW and Focus, of course, believe in the goals of the ordinance, especially how it can benefit workforce housing. Our initial financial underwriting for this development did not include an affordable component. It was conceptualized before the inclusionary housing ordinance was introduced. But, you know, we recognize it's economically challenging, of course, to be able to do it, but we heard through the public hearings in our meetings with some affordable advocates, we heard the messaging and understood the passion that the community has for it. So we did sharpen our pencils throughout the underwriting, had a few more conversations, and we are happy to propose a portion of the units on site as affordable. At this time, the proposal is 3.5% of the units to be reserved for residents earning 60 and 80% AMI, which you may recognize as the same affordability as used in the ordinance that did pass. For some simple math, for the 425 units in phase one, 3.5% of that is 15 units. And that's would adjust, of course, if the unit count changed, but that's the 3.5% that we're talking about. 60 and 80%, just for knowledge, our goal is to target, as I mentioned, workforce housing. This means folks that work at the hospital, teachers, other families that want to work and live in the community. We did have a couple discussions with the local superintendents. They, in particular, love the idea of younger teachers coming into the community and the opportunity that they could have somewhere to say it's great for their marketing and promoting for those positions, but also, you know, a real issue for some of those younger people that don't have the means to otherwise be able to afford. So the last thing I'll mention with that, I stated 3.5%. Again, it's an economics question as well as the passion that we have for it. So what we intend to discuss further with the Board of Trustees, if there are other priorities, either with more units that perhaps have a higher inverse relationship to the affordability, there is a potential for that, as well as fee in lieu, of course, is within the ordinance. So if that component was added, that's something we could discuss in combination with different levers that we could pull otherwise. But I did want to at least introduce that with the project. With that, I'll pass it back to Stephen to go through phase two. Thank you.
I'm back. I'm
Okay.
not an architect. I'm not trained as an architect. It's not in my background at all, but I will, other than many, many years of developing. So I am going to start with a not exciting slide, but it is definitely something that we want to talk about. So we're going back to the slide that Justin walked you through, but I want to focus on the phase two parcels. So the phase two consists of these two buildings here, sitting just to the east of the Phase 1 parcels. The building to the north is up to a 250-unit multifamily residential building on a retail podium. The building to the south is the 200-key hotel that I mentioned. So this building, you can see it on this diagram here. You can see the garage that the building fully wraps. The reason I wanted to start with the circulation slide is to kind of understand what's going on the site. Because we were doing a little bit of a maneuver with the existing north access today that we've done a lot of study on. This north access road does indeed go through this building at the ground level. So there's essentially a keyhole through this building that roadway goes through. We've been in discussion with your professional staff, with the county's professional staff about, what's the right way to treat this intersection. The county's professional staff has recommended that we restrict, essentially eliminate the left-hand turn from Old Orchard Road coming into the center. So this diagram represents what we believe is acceptable to the county, which is a right out and an ability to go left out, but not left in. The methodology behind that is Old Orchard Road's being widened today. The queuing lane to come down to the light at Laverne is being more than doubled from a queuing perspective. So there's a strong preference that that car continues down to make the left-hand turn movement onto Laverne, and that uncomplicates this intersection by not having too many maneuvers on the intersection. The rest essentially is what Justin already walked you through today from a circulation perspective. This is Creighton Borough on this side, so it's really just the ring road as it is today, making the left-hand turn and then continuing on that inner ring road. So the plans themselves, this is the ground level plan. So this is the north access roadway that I just pointed out. The final thing I should mention here is we did do a signal study as well. The design of this intersection and how you see the buildings laid out does allow for a signalized intersection if eventually the county mandates a signalized intersection. We're fine with that condition. It's not an issue. We've done all the design to ensure that that can be signalized if that's ever directed. But as I said, the county is suggesting that we eliminate the left-hand turn in. So on the ground plane here, as Justin mentioned, we're really focused on maintaining the experience of Old Orchard as it is today from a pedestrian scale. We're really manic about that pedestrian experience of what's happening in the center. So what you're really coming up on, if you're not coming up to a lobby of one of the buildings, you're still coming up on commercial retail essentially, which is what is in this orange here. And on the orange on the base of the multifamily building. Again, for additional context, you've got CPK, you've got Capital Grill, and Creighton Barrel. This pink, purple, whatever it's showing on the screen here, that is the hotel lobby with the drop off in front of it. Again, it's either a valet experience or the customer will drop off their bags, park in their own garage, walk back over. There's a lot of examples across the country of these types of setups where you have the hotel a little bit more remote from the parking structure, and the walking time from here to here is just a few minutes. So it feels a little bit longer when you're looking at the plan, but the reality of the walk is actually pretty short. While I'm on this slide, for the hotel building, it's important to note in the application is that one thing in particular. So we've shown on the application the 200-key hotel. That's our intention. It's our strong desire from a merchandising perspective. I'm going to speak as the retail developer that I am, is that we do bring a quality flagged hotel to the site. We think it's very beneficial from a cross-shopping experience, from a dwell experience at the site. We do have a lot of interest from hotel developers in the site. They see the power of the place creation that we're doing. It can become a draw in of itself. That said, if the macroeconomic environment doesn't allow for it at the time, or there simply isn't a deal in the hotel world, we have put in the application a conversion rate to 125 multifamily units for the site. The reality is if there's changes to the plan, we're going to be back in front of this board. So like if there's physical changes to the buildings, we're going to be right back here again to walk everybody through any of the changes and all we've done to ensure that that works. Just to touch on the affordability piece, that put it perfectly in terms of our methodology. The methodology flows through phase 2, 3.5% on this amount of units up to 250. That's 9 additional units for phase 2. And that, again, it's all determined by that final unit And really, finally, just because, well, actually, before I get to that piece, sorry. You can tell Justin's more of the architect than me. So, but from a place creation piece, we continue the experience of the amenity deck that's overlooking the town green. It was really important, and really, again, this is kudos to Torta Gallus, our architect team, for planning the site, of really ensuring that this is a true hub of activity and a community space. That when you're in the space, you're visually interacting what's happening up on the amenity decks for the multifamily, you're visually interacting what's happening up on the deck that sits up above for the hotel, for their F&B restaurant, for their pool deck, could be private ballroom space as well. There is a lot of interest from the hotel groups on eventing space on the site for ballrooms because of the dearth in the marketplace. But the layout is such that we really want to ensure that the visual interaction is all happening in this new place that we've created. And then just to touch on the landscape plan piece, I mentioned the 22,000 square foot town green. The phase 2 adds in about another 7,000 feet into the activity zone there. If you overlaid phase 1 and phase 2 and you looked at the plans, you'll see some overlap in the scope, that we do one thing in phase 2 and we're gonna have to come back and redo just a little stretch of it we do it in phase 1, we'll come back and do little pieces of it in phase 2 to ensure that it's perfectly married up. That we do want that seamless experience at the end of the day, that as we add this final piece to the town green, when it's done, it's gonna feel like everything was always meant to be that way and built there. On the elevations, again, I'll leave this more to Torta Gallus if there's specific questions, but what this is showing is the 8-story building on the left, which is the hotel, and the 7-story building on the right, which is the multifamily. This is when you're looking from across the street, from Old Orchard Road, this is that keyhole that I mentioned. So that's that north access road that goes through the building. This is the existing curb cut where it sits today. So the building sits up over top and spans it. Within the heart of this building is the parking structure where all of these residents park to get to their apartments. And again, just one more elevation on the angle. So this is from the reverse side. So as you are walking through the professional building, this is what you're coming to. You're coming to this retail base that is kind of what you have today. The difference is that it's really good retail space, it's quality, it's new, it's got tall ceiling heights, it's got this activity that's happening up above it with the pool deck, and then the hotel that sits above that. And then this is the reverse side, looking through that keyhole, looking back out toward Old Orchard Road, and again, with more typical Main Street retail. And just to touch on the retail piece one last time, one thing that these types of developments gives us the opportunity to do is actually to bring in some additional everyday needs. We're cognizant of the fact that we're gonna have people living on site. Obviously, we have almost 9 million people a year coming to the site as it is that would also benefit from everyday needs, but we focus the merchandising in these environments to service the people more that live here. So that is still a stronger emphasis on F&B, but it's also just true everyday need stuff, whether we can find a small pharmacy, whether it can be a dry cleaner drop-off only, no dry cleaner facilities, but just the services that you would want if you live in these buildings. And then, finally, because I know we've been talking for a while, I do want to thank you for your time tonight in reviewing the application. The benefits to the future growth and stability of Old Orchard are important. They're importantly tied to these applications for us making the investments here. And we look forward to continuing to be a vibrant, robust member of the community here. This is a very exciting project for our team, and we look forward to bringing it. I'm going to hand it off to Donna to wrap it up.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, this concludes our case in chief, and we're all here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, Commissioner Berman?
Thanks for the presentation, very informative. On the underground parking under the professional building, I saw in the plans that there is a repurposing, redirection of the entry exit. Could you describe where that is going to be and if it's been finalized? I think it was still hypothetical in the plan. And while you're getting up, there's one more traffic-related question I'm going to ask, and that is the 20-foot right-of-way, the new street that's being proposed, maybe Shirley. That 20-foot right-of-way seems narrow. I know it's pedestrian-friendly, but it seems narrow for two-way traffic. Is there talk of that being two-way traffic or one-way traffic? So those are the two questions.
Hello?
Good evening.
Hi.
Kelly Connolly with Sam Schwartz, a business address of 200 South Wacker in Chicago. I'm representing Sam Schwartz. We conducted the traffic and parking study that you'll see in your packet. So I wanted to address the question that the commissioner had regarding this right here. That was your specific question.
And the underground that is currently underground has entry access near Cheesecake Factory now.
Yes, exactly. So this represents a slight relocation of this ramp, as well as a lay-by lane for hotel drop-off and pickup. The design of the underground garage, as I understand it, and we could talk to the architect a little bit more, is still being finalized, because that gets into very detailed structural design on how the operation of that ramp works. But this is a feasible location, and so we did look at it.
Okay. The other question about the 20-foot street that is being proposed, why 20 feet, and is that sufficient for two cars to pass? Is it a two-directional street or one-way?
Are we talking? Oh,
It's the
we're talking-
north-south street,
The
that's right.
north-south street, yes. Actually, yeah, good question. We were intentionally keeping that road very narrow because we'd like it to be a very pedestrian-friendly street. We recommended between 10 and 11 feet per travel lane. So it's absolutely adequate for two-way travel and will be two-way travel. The only sort of one-way operation here is that this will be restricted to rights in and rights out only. This median, as you know, will be reconstructed as part of the old Orchard Road. So the median restricts access to right in, right out anyways.
Okay, one more traffic and parking question while I
Sure.
have you, and that's the orange garage. That's only gonna be for the residential buildings, no longer gonna be for customer and retail use?
Only only the top floors will be reserved for residential. So there'll be plenty of parking remaining for the commercial uses.
And the hotel possibly, if that
And
gets
the
built in
hotel,
phase two.
exactly.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to add one thing, the north-south street, which I earlier referred to as Shirley. We spent a lot of time actually on that, and I think staff can speak to it as well, but we were trying to strike a balance between keeping it pedestrian-friendly, for crossing, calm, not promoting a ton of traffic, but in addition to that, we did spend a lot of time with the fire department to make sure that all their needs are met as well. So I just want to make that clear that this whole plan has been approved, or, I don't know if approved's the right word, but it's been reviewed and signed off by.
Any other questions? Commissioner Berman?
And maybe I should be asking this to staff, but relative to the towers, the taller buildings, bird strike mitigation ordinances would apply?
So, yes, so the village has a building code as relates to bird strike mitigation. So when they would work through the permit process, we would do the calculations and work with them on materials and to the calculation to make sure the buildings would be safe.
Thank you.
Commissioner Giuliano?
Thank you. I have another question about the orange garage. So is that parking for both the north and south buildings for phase one?
For phase one, it will accommodate both the north portion and the south portion. The north building accesses the garage through the bridges that they were discussing.
How far of a walk is that approximately? Just out of curiosity.
This distance is approximately, this distance in total is approximately 200 feet, so.
No.
Yeah, so the answer to your question, it'll obviously vary on the unit
Yeah.
and so on. So our intent is that the parking garage, we're gonna use 638 spots. Vic's looking to tell you how many total spots are in the garage. Those spots will be nested, secure, and adjacent to the building. Where'd the pointer go? Thank you. It'll be adjacent here. So if somebody lives over here, we're gonna make sure that their spot is here.
Got it.
And really, play with that and make sure it's not a nuisance. And I can also tell you that we have experienced this, again, going back to that mall expertise. Our project in Hawthorne, we studied that, we've leased it up, it has similar distances. So we have an actual, plan that works there. We think it's gonna work here even better, because frankly, this is even a more urban location than Vernon Hills, Illinois.
Okay, I have another question, totally separate. The retail tenants in these buildings, are they subject to all the same standards as the other retail tenants in Old Orchard, or is it separate?
Yeah, it's a great question. So all of the retail at Old Orchard is still gonna be managed by Westfield. So we're doing all the leasing, all the management, all the tenant construction. From an operating perspective, no one's gonna know the difference. We are co-developers of the buildings, we're co-owners of the buildings, and yeah, it's super important that these really shine.
Commissioner Sayer?
Is there gonna be additional parking, so the parking, we're taking Orange and making it for the buildings. It seems to me like you're taking some current parking, by bringing in more, businesses, I imagine that we're gonna be bringing in more people. Where are those people coming from? None. So, yeah, a little, summary of the parking situation. So the Orange Garage is currently about 15% occupied on a December condition. So it is highly underutilized. So it will continue to accommodate those people. It will accommodate all of the residential in this building. We also, you're absolutely correct, we lose approximately 400 surface parking areas throughout the total of both, phase 1 and 2. And so that will be accommodated via Orange, as well as, while this wraps a parking garage also. And that can be used by visitors to the mall. It's not just for people using the hotel or people who are residents of that building. It may be. So the way that this building is designed is to accommodate the village's parking requirement, which is 1.5 spaces per unit. By all measures, that's probably too much for what will be in terms of demand that this is generated. So there may be some option to use that for commercial parking, but we are imagining that the Orange Garage is accommodating. It's also probably worth pointing out from a commercial perspective, we're losing Bloomingdale's, which is 200,000 square feet, which is sort of null, a basis line, because it was vacant when we did our counts, but we're losing an additional 100,000 square feet of retail prior to building. So a lot of the uses that were generating parking demand in this area for spaces is going away and being rebuilt with the vision of them using the Orange Garage.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Matei?
So, related to the garage particularly, it's 6 floors now. It's approximately 1,500 parking spots,
About 2,000.
about 2,000. How many of the floors, of the upper floors, are going to be dedicated to just residential?
Just for the record, the Orange Garage currently contains 2,033 parking stalls. The residential, as planned, would use 638 of those 2,033.
So around half,
Third.
less, a third, yeah, yeah. So do you envision 2 floors, like 5 and 6, or?
Yeah, so if, probably don't need a visual to see it, but the garage, as you mentioned, is 6 levels. The roof is the 6th level, so the levels that we're connecting to the residential building would be levels 3, 4, 5, and 6. Levels 1 and 2 is where there's a driving lane, so there's no parking connected to the building. So the answer to your question, the residential parking is effectively sectioned off for a portion of the floors on 3, 4, 5, and 6, with secured access and direct access into the building.
So it'll be like card access for the floors that'll be dedicated, and mall visitors will not have access.
That's exactly right. The 1.35 per the village's requirement will be within that secured area. Guest parking, the 0.15 of that ratio is outside within the public space, and then the rest of the public space it remains as it is today.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Berman?
Commercial questions that my neighbors are asking. What happens to Barnes and Noble? Phase 1 looks like it eliminates Barnes and Noble. And Phase 2 looks like it eliminates Cheesecake Factory. So what are those are the
Everybody has
big,
their favorites.
those are the big questions.
We love Barnes and Noble too, so we're already in discussion with where they're gonna go. We're confident we're gonna be able to find a home for them. We actually have kind of a multi-phase plan for them, where they'll land in their permanent location on site. We're also currently already in discussions with Cheesecake Factory for their new location on site as well. Yeah, they're really the only two that we need to move. We have control of all of the other space. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Commissioner Berman?
Can you just address the traffic issues relative to Old Orchard Road and Laverne in terms of increased traffic flow and accommodating that?
So, my firm, Sam Schwartz, conducted the parking and traffic study. It's been reviewed by your staff, by the county, and revised. So it comes up with a list of geometric traffic control, signage, pavement marking recommendations. In general, the conclusions of the study, if I were to encapsulate it in a few sentences, residential is not a high traffic generator. So while the buildings look, dense and big, the reality is that residential doesn't generate a lot of traffic. And it also helps to disperse what would typically be a very concentrated retail traffic of, Saturday midday or evening hours, and spreads it out to accommodate it's generating more traffic actually in the morning than any other peak hour. So we looked at AM rush hour, PM rush hour, and Saturday midday. In order of magnitude, we're generating about 300 additional trips in the morning. We're actually only generating about 100 additional trips on a Saturday in a peak hour, the peak hour of the day. And as an order of magnitude, the center overall is generating probably about 5,000 in any one peak hour. So, 5 to 6% increase that we feel confident that is managed by the circulation and geometric improvements that we're able to make by moving a lot of these sort of archaic roadway systems around.
A question on traffic. So theoretically, have you anticipated that some of the residents may be able to enter from the south end of the mall, like off of Golf,
Absolutely.
and work their way through the center to get to their parking?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We anticipate Laverne will be a key route from the south because, especially for phase 1, because that's a direct access into their garage.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lasair? Commissioner, could you check to see if your microphone's on?
I forgot, sorry. I'm wondering if this affects the high school in any way.
In terms of traffic, you're asking.
Traffic, construction, et cetera.
You can probably speak of construction. I will say, we were very careful about doing our study when school was in session and doing observations for school cues and whatnot. So that's all incorporated into the report also.
And I just want to make one clarification on the traffic. The additional traffic counts that she mentioned just a moment ago were based on Bloomingdale's that's closed. So all our counts were based on that box being dark. So that's an important point, I think. As far as the schools go, Vic and I actually met with both the superintendents for the high schools and the grade school. And we had very positive meetings. In summary, we presented some numbers as far as generation of students, how many students, with some studies that are pretty standard in the industry, had a nice conversation, especially with the high school, and we basically concluded that from our data on our other mall projects, these studies, that the project as planned, phase one, might produce at most 10 to 20 students. And in both cases, both superintendents, you know, and you can ask them yourselves, but they agreed with the logic. And the high school is like, listen, as far as busing and so on, like if we have any need for that, we're just gonna send a minivan over there. It's so close, everyone's gonna walk. The grade schools, you know, they weren't concerned about transportation. They own their buses now. They felt like the demand that we're creating is so small, it wouldn't be an issue. We've committed to working with them as far as a bus drop-off somewhere on the site that we would agree to and work with them on. As you know, there's already existing public transit bus stops and so on in the back of the property anyways. And then I guess lastly, I think the only other thing with the grade schools I should mention is there was some discussion. Right now, I think the elementary school would be Old Orchard. There was some discussion if there ever was a ramp up of more students in elementary, they might consider having those students attend a different school. I don't remember the name of it, but south of Old Orchard Road, just across from the center. So that was the extent of it. Very nice meetings.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, yes.
Just timeline on phase one, phase two. So you said 26 months approximately for phase one?
Yeah, I think I said 27.
27 months.
We, you know, our intent would be to get approvals here, then we would work into, you know, actual working drawings for permit and so on, get financing, et cetera. So at this point, I think, you know, a reasonable assumption would be a construction start sometime second, third quarter of next year. And then from that point, it would be 27 months. We would open the building, you know, for leasing maybe month 25, 26, because we'd have units available at that time. And then we just continue to lease until it fills up. I think, and Stephen can stand up here, I think we would want to certainly execute on phase one and see how it's going before we would commit to any sort of schedule on phase two, because it may dictate some changes. As he mentioned, if we make changes, we have to come back here. But if, you know, if the program changes because of phase one, that's a good lesson learned, in my opinion.
Sure, so they are two distinct construction projects that will occur separately. We will finish phase one before phase two goes under construction.
Correct. And factually, Focus is involved with phase one, and we'd hope to do phase two, but right now we're focused, no pun intended, on phase one.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Pugh, at this time, I'm gonna ask the staff to give its report. Thank you very much. The staff is Mike Wojtek.
Good evening. I'd like to request that both staff reports for cases 2024, 20P, it's the subdivision case, as well as 2024, 21P site plan approval case for 4801 to 4999 Old Orchard Center be accepted into the record as written.
Your request is granted.
We got some staff review comments for the site. These go into just a few bullet points taken from our staff report that discuss some of our comments, some of our other departments' observations. We're going to talk about some of the conditions that will go into the ordinance, more of the non-standard conditions that you wouldn't otherwise see for most cases. So we'll go forward with that. So the staff recommends that the petitioner's request to amend the existing site plan approval for a planned development for multi-phase modifications at Westfield Orchard Center be approved based upon the proposed positive findings of fact and subject to the recommended conditions. There are currently two site plan approval ordinances that are active for this site. As mentioned previously, when the shopping center came back for the most recent renovations and features, that's the 12-1Z 3876. And this ordinance applies just to the Westfield-owned portion. At the time, when it all came to Plan Commission, Macy's also had a separate ordinance drafted. We're not making any modifications to that ordinance at this time because they are not a petitioner as part of this set of cases. And then in 2014, there was a second ordinance that was drafted. And those of you at the time may recall, the Westfield came in for a special use permit to regulate outdoor storage of vehicles, or not storage, displays of vehicles. There were some courtyard displays set up. We are going to incorporate the applicable conditions from both of those ordinances into this new ordinance that's going to be generated by the new site plan approval. And we're going to request that those be repealed because they're outdated. Internal operations are now largely governed by Westfield themselves. So if it's not visible from the street, it's regulated under the standards and oversight of the property management and the owner of the property. Several items of relief that were granted in the site plan approval ordinance from 2012 will be carried forward into the new ordinance. This is a screenshot of the staff report, so I took this from page 8 and 9 of the staff report. We're going to retain 5 of these. And these are all carried over, and they've probably carried over, several of them have carried over from even older site plan cases, because given the history, the shopping center's been there since 1956, and over time things have changed. New ordinances come to the village. We still carry forward ones that are applicable, and we're doing that now. We're going to bring these 5 green highlighted code sections, items of relief, into this request, and we just request that those be maintained. At the bottom, you'll notice that there's a grayed out section that I also struck out. It was in the report erroneously. There is an ordinance from 1964, and that ordinance was not an ordinance that generated any type of relief, created any type of relief. It was an ordinance that rezoned where the Montgomery Ward's auto repair center was. So we're going way back in time.
Yeah.
After Montgomery Ward replaced the Fair store in 1964, they constructed an auto repair facility where the current detention pond is. In order to be able to do that at that time, they had to rezone the property from R1 residential to, I believe, the B4 zoning. That ordinance, the 64 ordinance, was a zoning map amendment. It's not site plan approval, so we want to keep that active. We don't want to touch that. So our staff analysis indicates that Old Orchard is a major retail and entertainment destination. Introducing a mixed-use development is an overall current trend, as demonstrated by the petitioners. We've seen shopping centers in the area, in the vicinity, even across the country and worldwide, doing the same activity, where we're bringing in residential, we're adding 24/7 activity, residential on site, with retail, entertainment, recreational uses. The petitioner has stated seeking the LEED Gold certification and has explained many of the features that will be as part of that LEED Gold. Parking, and this has been discussed, but this breaks it down. 638 parking spaces are required for the residential parking. That's for up to 425 dwelling units in phase 1, and up to 638 parking spaces can be provided. 375 parking spaces are required for the residential parking, up to 250 dwelling units in phase 2, and up to 375 parking spaces can be provided. 250 parking spaces are required for the proposed hotel. This is 200 rooms, 200 keys in phase 2, and 250 spaces are provided in the Orange Garage. Total of 5,140 parking spaces are required and 6,078 parking spaces are provided for the retail spaces. 200 parking spaces are required, and 200 parking spaces are provided for the office spaces. This is the 4905 Old Orchard building. As stated before, Appearance Commission will be reviewing this case at the earliest would be August 28th. So we're anticipating that it would be going forward at that date. And now the recommended conditions. These are the certain items that we do want to mention that are unique to this case, that we want to have added to our list of conditions in the ordinance. So the existing structures are allowed to remain with their required setbacks. We've established a date in that the Phase 2 permit applications process shall commence no later than 7 years or 84 months from the date of the adoption of the site plan approval ordinance by the Board of Trustees. The signage conditions at the center support economic vitality and unique customer experiences. Neither site plan approval amendments to this plan nor administrative approvals from the village manager are required for the following changes when not visible from the public right-of-way. These are all interior facing features. Improvements, modifications to the common areas of the shopping center, however, all improvements will comply with building, fire, and health codes. Modifications to landscaping, ornamental ponds, and other common areas, except for landscaping in the parking lots where they are visible from above right-of-way, as well as I mentioned before, the locations of outdoor vehicle displays. A valet parking plan shall be submitted on or before February 1st of each calendar year to the village manager for review and approval with appropriate village public safety officials. The plan shall include locations of valet stands and locations of where valet parking will occur. And this is an item that currently is one of our conditions, and we wish to have that maintained forward. Collected trash and enclosures shall be screened from public view. Unstaffed collection boxes or events to collect items for donation are not permitted on site. We do have an instance of at least one on site. It's a larger, I want to call it a container, like a storage container, but it's on the north parking lot, and it's occupying probably about 3 spaces. And so we have a few of these in town. We're asking that management and the owner remove them from the site because the parking is needed by the shopping center there. Outdoor open storage for property maintenance equipment and materials is not allowed on site. Storage must be enclosed and appropriately signed and maintained as presented on site plans. This is specifically referring to an area just north of the detention area. This is in the west parking lot. The shopping center has some maintenance equipment, some areas where some landscaping material is being stored. This is all occupying parking in that area. And we do have a general code requirement that outdoor storage either get a special use permit or they move it inside. And so we're going to work with the petitioner on finding an appropriate location where to relocate these items so that we can free that area up for parking. The village shall conduct a signal warrant analysis 1 year after the certificate of occupancy is issued for Phase 2. Traffic consultant will be determined by the village with input from the petitioner. The study should determine if a traffic signal is warranted at the intersection of Old Orchard Road and Lamont Avenue during this time. The cost of the analysis will be paid for by the petitioner. If the future study finds that traffic signal warrants are met, a traffic signal must be designed, approved by the Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways and the village, and installed as part of this project. Any costs that result in the installation of the traffic signal are to be paid by the petitioner. The petitioner shall install all-way stop control 1 year after final certificate of occupancy has been issued for buildings comprising Phase 1 at the intersection of Laverne Avenue and West Access, if lengthy westbound queues are frequently observed outside of seasonal conditions.
Mike, what's the time frame on that stoplight?
I believe that would be after Phase 1, so there will be a study on that. I think they'll commence.
The warrant analysis would be 1 year after the completion and occupancy of Phase 2. So the idea would be, let's get the buildings built, occupied, and see how they, people utilize the site once everyone's figured out where things are.
Thank you.
For the peak periods of parking usage on the subject property, the petitioner shall provide off-duty police personnel on a higher back basis at the Old Orchard Road, Laverne Avenue intersection, or where necessary to direct traffic as needed. All fire lane zone determinations and signage, as required by the Fire Prevention Bureau, shall be installed and maintained by Westfield Old Orchard Shopping Center. In coordination with PACE, CTA, and local school districts, the petitioner will locate a bus stop on the site to pick up and drop off school-age children requiring bus transportation to and from school. I think that's been mentioned as well. I guess the only other question on that would be if it's a private school, you know, if somebody's not going to Niles North, they're going to, you know, some other school in the area, there would have to be some coordination on where that bus would come into the site and pick up the children. Local storm water requirements will be met for phase 1 and phase 2 of the project. The total acreage of the entire property is approximately 85 acres. The portions of phase 1 and phase 2 are approximately 45 acres. The remaining 40 acres meets the TP 40 detention requirements that the village enforced when the sewers were split. This was in 1992, but not the Bulletin 75 requirements, which is the current standard. Any future redevelopment of the remainder of the 40 acres shall be subject to local stormwater requirements and/or MWRD district requirements. The Laverne Avenue Phase 1 water main and storm sewer connections shall be restored from curb to curb. Surface restoration shall be one pavement patch if the trenches are 10 feet or less from each other. The pavement restoration shall be maintained in perpetuity. And that concludes my
Okay.
slides.
Any questions of the staff's report? Commissioner Matei?
Mike, who is gonna maintain and continue to own the garage?
Which garage?
The orange garage, thank you.
That would be maintained by the petitioner. The orange garage will remain on the property of Westfield and maintained.
In
by Westfield.
ownership of the garage?
That will remain on Westfield's ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the staff's
I
report?
have a question, I'm not sure it's
Sure.
staff. Loading and unloading into this now dense package of housing and retail, right now it's unsightly, we all know, but that was built a long time ago on the north end for both the former Bloomies building and the former and under Zara. Those are going to be eliminated in phase 1, phase 2. Where do semis load and unload into this complex? Do you have
The
that?
site plan shows multiple loading points for each building. I can have the petitioner highlight those.
I guess my question is, are they open? Are they as open as they currently are, as opposed to a wraparound as they are in some other parts of the mall that were built later? The west portion, around behind Buffalo Wild Wings has a hidden loading and unloading, and other parts of the mall have hidden. This does not at the moment, but it's all gonna be changed, so I was wondering, maybe the developer wants to answer that.
They can show that in their elevation.
That's fine, I'll ask the question again.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Any further questions of staff? Mike, thank you very much. Ms. Pugh, would you please step up and?
Yeah, it's behind there. I'll get it for you. I don't know which one of the two it is.
Okay, have you and your client had a chance to review the staff report, and have any questions or comments on the report? Anything that you might have trouble with?
We do not. And luckily, we had a really thorough dialogue about especially traffic and parking and all that, and we're very comfortable with it.
Okay, very good. Okay. At this time,
I just want to ask that
Sure.
question one more time. Clarify for everybody.
Yeah.
If somebody could show where the loading and unloading is into the phase 1, phase 2 projects.
I think it's still open down here. So, I have to find it real quick here. I can answer phase 1. Stephen, do you want to address phase 2 or not? All right, so, pointer, here we go. We have a combination of both enclosed and loading zones. I may need to refer back to the files for loading zones, but on the south building, there's an enclosed dock here for loading and trash. On the north building, it's right here. And then around the site, which I had to go back and look at the files, there's locations that we've designated for loading, you know, for smaller items and stuff. The one nice thing about this use are, you know, the property management companies that we tend to work with, we can schedule all those deliveries. So it's not a situation where we allow people just to roll up with a semi truck or something like that. So we usually can control time, you know, make sure if it is some sort of unusual load or whatever, we can accommodate it so it's not affecting the mall or traffic or anything like that. So,
Okay, thanks.
And that'll handle both as well, the move in and move out of residence?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, we schedule both movements, and we also have to schedule for the sake of elevators. You know, there's a lot of things that go along with the logistics of that. And frankly, you know, our tenants are usually pretty sticky, so once they're in, they'll stay for a few years. So it's not like college dormitory where every, you know, September there's trucks lined up down the street or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Pugh. At this time, I'm gonna open up the floor to anyone who has a question or a comment on this case. So would you all please just kind of line up along the wall there if you plan to speak? And also, too, I have up here sign-in sheets, or sign-up sheets here. And if you sign up, we will give you a copy of this report, and we will notify you when the,
That's for people who signed
oh,
up.
these, oh,
Yeah, so just read off the
oh, I see, okay, I'm sorry. So, we have 8 people that have signed up to speak, okay. Who's first then? We got two, okay, how about Kathy White? I'm gonna go by the sheet here, this. Ms. White? Yes, thank you, good evening.
I didn't realize we were going in order of writing things down.
I didn't realize that, I thought these were just sign-up sheets for copies of the report and for notification. I didn't realize these were sheets for people to speak, but we have 2 sheets,
That
so.
either, but
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
happy
go ahead.
to. I live at 5001 Golf, and that makes me the first house southwest of Old Orchard. And I have to say, first of all, that I've been very pleased with what has gone on there for the last umpteen years. I've been there since 1997, so I've seen a number of changes. And I think this is a brilliant way of addressing the issues with retail. I do have some concerns, and I'd like to cite them. I'm glad to see that you're going for gold LEED certification, because one of the things they're going to get you for is drainage. And one of the things that's happening in Chicagoland, particularly as a climate change alters our weather patterns, is increased flooding. So that's particularly important in a place where we're adding a fair bit of pavement and a fair bit of concrete. I'm also concerned about checking the financials. I've already heard little rumbles about the developers coming back for more help one way or another, and we have on Oakton an example of a problem with that. I'd like that not to happen here. The other thing is affordable housing, really supporting that. It is not just about doing the right thing. It's about the economy. If we don't support what we're doing here in Old Orchard, what's being proposed here, by having well-paid people who are well-trained and show up on a regular basis, it's gonna fail one way or another. And we need that money coming from retail. So it is really important for us to make a place for people to live in the area. And I would really like to see us maximize that affordable housing within those units. There are people at Old Orchard, clerks, who are already asking about, gosh, I would like to live here. This makes sense. I don't have to commute. I don't have to go back to Chicago where they pay me more, but it's hard to live. Just my 2 cents for being a local person.
Thank you.
Thank you. Adi Mancio, Tansley? Is that right? No? Okay. Go on to a John Tansley. John, do you wish to speak? No, that was just for information. Okay, thank you. Lauren? Okay. And C. Stalik, is that right? Yes, please, come up.
I'm sorry, this is my first meeting.
Okay.
I live at 121 Bronx Avenue. I am on the other side of Shirley, apparently. And so I have a couple of questions after, you know, we've lived there for about 6 years. My children go to Highland School, which is the school in the area, not Old Orchard. That will be the junior high that they all go to. And one of my concerns is there's a multi-use bike path that's supposed to be going right through there. We've had 2 bike accidents in Skokie in the last 2 weeks, one with a resident or a pedestrian killed. How are we keeping people safe on that new street with, especially if they're coming through that garage? I can just picture people coming out of that garage area and coming right in front of a bike path. Are there going to be stop signs? Are there going to be flashing lights? Are there going to be ways to keep our kids safe? My hope was that there weren't gonna be any cars going through there, because that's a big concern, especially considering that that's gonna be a main thoroughway for kids to get to the high school. My other concern is, after living on the other side of Bronx, and hearing the proposal about traffic, and how are we gonna be able to get out? So it sounds like there's going to be a one-way street in and out. Currently, we only have one way in and out of our neighborhood, and it's onto Old Orchard Road. Is there gonna be a way for us to make a left in and out of our neighborhood? There is the light there, but if everybody in our little comb, the best way I can describe it, if you kind of look at how that is, are trying to get in and out of one light, that's also where the park is. How are we gonna keep those kids safe? We also don't have any parking over there with the pickleball court. That and the new park that you guys just did such a great job, not you, but the park district did a great job of putting in, and so people do park on that other side of Old Orchard, over where you're going to be having the apartments, and walk across the street to get to that park. So we do use that parking lot sometimes for the park as well as the people who play soccer on that court use that parking lot to park on. So, because there isn't any parking on that park over there. So my concern is kind of like the safety aspect of it, and how are we gonna keep that safe in that neighborhood?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your concerns will most likely be looked at, you know, by staff. Sarah, please? Yes.
So I am Sarah
Could you
Jeanette.
give us your full name, please? and
Sarah
address?
Jeanette, and I'm with Blink Mason Candle Bar. I'm in phase 1, so I'm just want to understand, what are you going to be doing with, I guess, your bad retail, and having conversations.
Miss, could you address us, please?
Yep, having conversations with those tenants, like where are we going to be located in the mall? Is there space for us? When is this going to happen? With my business, I'm an experience. We book out a year in advance for bridal showers and all the fun activities. So we haven't been talked to at all. So just trying to understand what that looks like for us.
Okay, well, your made a voice, but that doesn't fall under the purview of this commission, so you'll have to take, and you just made them aware of your concerns, so you'll
Yeah.
discuss it with them later. Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay, Don Bell?
Hi,
Good evening.
Don Bell. I wasn't planning on speaking either, but I will, couple concerns. Will there be any improvements to the professional building? They're doing all this improvement at one end of the building, but what about the rest of the mall? There are gonna be improvements to the rest of the mall as well. And then, a while ago, a 1% sales tax was put in place for improvements of the mall. How is that going to affect in the future? Is that gonna be going away? Is that ever gonna end? Because it does affect my sales, because people will go to other locations because they don't wanna pay the extra 1% here.
Okay.
Business in the
I love SAC, yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Finally, we have Nathan Northup.
Also just for information.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Please, come up. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Gail Schechter, 9033B Keating. I'm here speaking as Skokie Neighbors for Housing Justice. And I want to echo Kathy's thanks. We're very pleased with this whole project for all the right reasons, a mixed-use development. I especially want to thank Mr. Fleur for listening to us. And I feel, actually, in fact, that he listened to us more than what we've heard out of the village in terms of the need for not only mixed use, but mixed income housing. I just have a couple of things, just two things for the developers. One is to consider permanent affordability for the affordable units. Expiring use means, you know, after 20 years, 40 years, they just go back to the market and those units are lost. And then obviously, wanting an increase in the number of affordable units. And it sounds from what we're hearing tonight that they are amenable to some kind of negotiation with the village, and I encourage you to engage in that. Because the other piece I wanted to mention is that when Mr. Pillay was indicating why housing at the mall, he listed 5 different constituent groups. He didn't list workers, although that was mentioned later. I'd like us to think conceptually that we're talking about, yes, the consistent shopper base, investments, suburbanites who want an urban environment, young professionals, empty nesters, and people aging out. And the other category is the local workforce, because if they're good enough to work here, they should be good enough to live here. I also wanted to mention, just from a fair housing perspective, I was glad to hear talk about accommodation for school buses, but to not use the term young professional and empty nester in marketing, because that implies that families with children are not permitted at the development. And then, finally.
Could you wrap it up quickly, Gail?
Yes. So essentially, Westfield's concern is about their customer base, but the village should really be also about the people, including the workforce. So again, look forward to hearing more about the affordable housing component. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Yes?
I just wanted,
Name,
Kimberly
please.
Polk, I'm getting there. You asked her for her name while she was saying it. Kimberly Polka, Skokie resident. I just want to point out that you haven't cut anybody else off tonight until you cut off Gail Schechter. And you started this meeting by saying that if there's a group, only one person could speak, which would be a violation of OMA. You've told me before to my face that developers pay for time. And by the way, thank you for including affordable housing, and thank you for the sustainability. I wish there was more affordable housing, but stop treating the residents like they're second to everything else. You have said that the developers get to speak longer because they've paid for that time. We pay every day into the village of Skokie. Stop cutting off your residents.
Yes. Next, please.
Good evening. I'm Sue Lolbach. I work at Connections for the Homeless. We serve about 5,000 people a year throughout North Suburban Cook County, including many, many people from Skokie. I'm the director of advocacy at Connections. My job is to fight for every unit of affordable housing that we can get. So I am very, very happy to see that there is affordable housing included in this development. As always, I would like to ask for more. Always, we're doing that. I'd love to see it go up to 5%. I know that the math doesn't work, that it's really, really hard. One of the things I would like to sort of raise, I'm not sure who the right group is to do this, but I think that the largest employers in Skokie should be stakeholders in affordable housing as well. They are the ones that are paying the wages. They have difficult math problems too. The wages are not enough for what people need. If perhaps they could find some ways to perhaps subsidize some of the rents, participate in some of the development for their workers, particularly the hospital systems, which have to do community contributions. I think that's something that, you know, as things develop at Old Orchard, maybe that's something we could look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Johnson, and please forgive me for reading off my phone. I've never given in-person public comments to the Plan Commission before, but I'm here to really advocate that you push Westfield on the issue of affordable housing. As a village trustee, I'm going to be one of the officials receiving your commission's recommendations, and I would like you and the Westfield representatives to know that this redevelopment project will not have my support if Westfield is unwilling to fully comply with the village's new inclusionary housing ordinance. And I'm saying this for two reasons. First, the affordability requirements in our inclusionary housing policy.
Trustee, I'm gonna ask you to save your comments for the board meeting. I'm serious. Please save your comments for the board meeting.
I'm gonna continue my
No.
comments. First, the affordability
Commissioner,
requirements in our
trustee,
inclusionary housing.
Please.
If you.
No, please. You need to state your comments at the board meeting. When this case comes before you.
Respectfully, Chairman.
No,
Luke,
I'm not gonna accept this.
This will be an OMA
No,
violation. if
Counselor, what
cut
do you
me
think?
off. This will be an OMA violation. I really strongly advise against this.
I think it's inappropriate.
It will be an OMA violation, Chairman Luke, if you cut me off.
Yeah, Paul, I think as a citizen, it's my opinion, that as a citizen, he has the right to speak separate from his position
But
as
he's
trustee.
Well,
speaking
then,
as a
then,
trustee.
then,
He's
then they're
already
speaking
said
as a
that.
trustee.
He
If
can't be speaking as a trustee at a plan commission
Right, he
meeting.
has mentioned that he's a trustee.
He happens to be that, but I think he's speaking as a
Every
But,
citizen
but
has
he's
the right to
also
speak
said,
his street.
he's also said he's already made up his mind for the vote. And there's no reason for him to speak now.
But-
I mean,
Could I ask?
as a trustee.
Could I ask Tyler, sorry, Tyler, for a legal opinion I think, as a lawyer, that he has the right to speak as a citizen.
As a citizen.
So that's what he happens to be a trustee. We happen to
But
be many
he's
things.
identified himself as a trustee. Correct. I asked, let's go back to square one. Please reintroduce yourself.
Thank you.
Chairman Luke, I'm going to continue my comments.
Would you just reintroduce yourself?
My name is James Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you. So first, the affordability requirements in our inclusionary housing policy are already way lower than they should be. Skoki's ordinance has some of really the most minimal requirements for any inclusionary housing policy in the country. So complying with our policy should, in my opinion, be the bare minimum that Westfield should be considering in terms of affordable housing. Second, in my opinion, the village has already done too much to assist Westfield in this redevelopment, and residents deserve community benefits like affordable housing from Westfield in response. In 2022, the village helped facilitate this redevelopment with a mistruth by saying that Old Orchard Mall is a quote-unquote blighted area, even though it is the most economically successful area of the village. And the village did this to allow Westfield to take an additional $80 million or more from consumers through a higher sales tax. So I'm here tonight because I strongly believe that if the village is going to go to such great lengths to support Westfield, which is a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation, then Westfield should fully comply with the minimal affordable housing requirements in Skoki's inclusionary housing policy. And I'm really asking for you to support in advocating that Westfield do this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. I am open for a motion. We need to vote on these two cases separately. First case tonight is the subdivision, case 2024-20P. Commissioner,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept staff report 2024-20P, the subdivision as presented.
okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Slayer. Okay. Call for the vote. Commissioner Slayer?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Manchella?
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman?
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin?
Aye.
Commissioner Giovannahu?
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta is absent. Commissioner Jeff Berman. Commissioner Matei. And I'll vote aye. Thank you. On the site plan approval,
I move approval
Okay.
as presented with just one comment, two comments.
yes,
One, that the developer consider the movement of all the businesses within. We heard some comments from some of those businesses, and I know the developer will be considering that, but I also agreed that there are no lesser businesses. While I mentioned Cheesecake Factory and somebody else earlier, I didn't, or Barnes Noble, I didn't want to overlook the little businesses who would be displaced. I want the developer to take care of that, and also to look once again at the affordable housing ordinance and the affordable housing that's planned on the site. Not something that we can or can't decide tonight, but something that the developer could look at as they're looking at the movement of stores. And with that, I move acceptance as presented.
do we have a second? Commissioner Giovannahu? Okay, call for the vote. Commissioner Spayer,
Aye.
Commissioner Manchella,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin,
Aye.
Commissioner Giovannahu,
Aye.
Commissioner Gupta is still absent, and Commissioner Jeff Berman. Commissioner Matei. And I'll vote aye. Okay.
Mr.
the pla-
Chairman?
Yes,
Of course, we appreciate this very much, but just a housekeeping question. I didn't hear the words accept the accept the staff report. I just want to make sure that the findings of fact are being adopted with that second
that was in the
vote.
motion.
What I moved was the proposal as presented. So as presented by the developer and the
The
staff.
staff.
It
But
works
as
for
presented
me,
is-
If that's how you.
That is
interpret
the
it.
way
Okay.
we usually move.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
We make it simple. We try to. Okay, these two cases still has to go before the Board of Trustees for final approval. They meet on the first Monday and the third Monday of every month. If anyone else wishes to sign up to get a copy of this report and to be notified when this case will go before the Board of Trustees, please sign in. I thank you all for coming tonight. Is there any other business before the commission? There is none. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Pardon me? No, I don't take final comments. What? We've already taken final comments.
No, you didn't, you have on the agenda, public comments not related to the agenda item. It's right on your agenda.
Well, I'll listen to it, but it's not gonna be recorded.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Gail Schechter again. I thought this is public comment not related to the agenda item, just about the timing for the Plan Commission working on the Community Land Trust and around rules around the Affordable Housing Fund, because actually in conversation with the leadership at Westfield, they were like, if we know what the rules are, if we know what the options are, but those haven't actually been established yet. There is no community land trust. There are no rules for the fund. So just wondering what your timetable is. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Who put that in as final comment? Look into that.